So everyone, we're going to record the session just so that we can post this to YouTube for any students who wanted to participate but were unable to do so tonight. If you don't feel comfortable, it may ask you to leave, so I apologize for that. Cool. Okay, is it already recording? I think I already, okay, cool. So welcome everyone to our third EOP AMA. This one is gonna cover kinesiology. We're gonna be focusing on some of the pathways that you can go into after you've earned your kinesiology degree. So we've invited a few special people here to share their experiences. And then we also have our EOP staff, Julia here with me, one of our other academic advisors, and Brittany, some of you may know, who's at Summer Bridge and one of our mentors. So just to kind of go over what we'll be doing, the first part we'll have a bit of conversation with Jonie, Kiana, and Leveail to share about themselves and answer some preset questions. If you have any questions that come up during the presentation, do feel free to input those questions in the chat, and we'll refer to them and have them answered during the AMA portion. So I know it's a little late, so we'll go ahead and get started. We have with us tonight Jonie Nguyen. So she is currently going to graduate from the UCSF SFSU Doctorate in Physical Therapy. We have Kiana Lacaden here with us, who graduated from Pacific University in Oregon with her MS in athletic training. And we have another special guest, Leveail Myles, who just recently graduated from SF State's Kinesiology program and is one of our very own EOP alumni. So I kind of want you guys to go ahead, introduce yourselves, pronouns, hometowns, and what you're currently doing now as a student or as a professional. So whoever wants to go first. Jonie, I'm gonna pick you because I see you smiling.
I wasn't sure because I couldn't see Kiana's face, so I can't see.
Can you see me now?
Who's ready. Yeah, I can see you now.
Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Jonie. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii.
My name is Kiana.
And then
profession, Jonie.
Now, yeah.
Right, what I'm doing now. Yeah, just studying for boards at the moment. I'm technically all done with all my studies, so just waiting to do boards and actually start making some money, which is kind of exciting.
Hi, my name is Kiana. Go by she, her, hers. I'm originally from Waipahu, Hawaii, and I'm currently working as an athletic trainer in the university.
And the
My name is Leveail Myles, and my pronouns are he. Hometown is Pasadena in Southern California, and I'm just again recent graduate so far. I do want to do the DPT program too, so I'm interested in doing that.
Awesome. So, you know, Jonie and Leveail, you're both having pursued or planning to pursue the DPT program. Kiana, you went the athletic training route. So you're all taking your own paths towards your graduate programs. So can you all talk about your journey and what inspired you to pursue your particular career path?
I'll go.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. So you could speak about your journey and what inspired you to pursue your particular career path. Did you always know you wanted to be an athletic trainer, or were there any specific moments where that helped you realize that this was the way that you wanted to go?
Right. In high school, I wanted to be an optometrist. And then my senior year, I actually blew out my knee, so that ended my career. And that's kind of what introduced me into the athletic training profession, hanging out with the one guy who was basically taking care of me during that time. And I knew going through to college, I wanted to do something in that aspect, like something exercise, something where you're working with athletes. And I tried out some PT. I I'm not a fan of like working in offices, so that was like a big no for me. And yeah, had a lot of experience with or volunteer work with colleges and high schools, and that's what kind of solidified it for me.
For me, it's kind of like a weird story, I guess, because I didn't know if I wanted to like even pursue college. Like I didn't know if I was gonna go to like community college and like pursue a degree. And also for me, I felt like I wanted to do and be everything. Like it was hard for me to decide like, oh, do I want to be like an artist or something, or like um, or to do something else. But like towards the end of like high school for me, I just started to ask a lot of friends and family, like, hey, like what could you see me doing as a profession in the future? And specifically, one friend's mother actually said, "Do you know what physical therapy is? You should look into what physical therapy is." And so I kind of like did like a brief search of like what physical therapy is, and I was like, I think I can see myself, doing that. It's like meaningful work, and also um, I like science, so that kind of was like that contributed to me pursuing a degree in kinesiology because I just like science. So that helped a lot, and that's kind of how I kind of got introduced into it and like figured out what it was and everything.
Nice.
That's pretty much it.
Jonie, how did
So when I started school and everything, I didn't quite know where I wanted to be. I think similarly to Kiana, I think I wanted to be somewhere in the medical field. But as I started to learn more about, maybe I was looking into like, I don't know, being a doctor or something, because that was the only thing I could think of that could be helpful to people. Started to learn more about it, wasn't quite pleased with the work-life balance. And after I finished college, I tried so many different jobs. I thought maybe I could be a teacher. I was like a swim instructor. I was a lifeguard. I was a camp counselor for Tree Frog Treks in Golden Gate Park. And I liked parts of it, but I didn't like all of it. And it didn't quite fit with who I was. And I remember there was like this silly quiz online to, tell you, these are the questions you should ask yourself to figure out where you need to be in life. And I remember one question in particular that struck me was, what is something in life that upsets you or angers you? And I remember thinking to myself, I don't really consider myself an angry person or frustrated with anything really. I'm pretty laid back, but I just remember thinking about like that question just really held on to me. And I thought about my grandmother, and there was an incident where when I was much younger, she was suffering from a stroke, and there was a moment where she and I were alone, and she fell out of bed and she couldn't communicate with me and I couldn't help her. And there was that moment of feeling really helpless and lost and not feeling like just, seeing someone you care about and seeing them sort of slowly, it unfortunately like deteriorate and fall apart a little bit, and not being able to do everything that they love to do. And that I was just remember thinking like, that's something I wish I could fix about the world. And I started looking online, like, I think I just looked up falls. I think falls was the key word. And of course, with falls, a lot of things came up with physical therapy. And the more I learned about physical therapy, it just, like Leveail said, like it kind of checked all my check boxes. It had that work-life balance. I enjoyed being on my feet. I really enjoy working with people and being challenged. And then after that, I just took nosedive right into physical therapy and took, any other prerequisites I had to take at City College. So here I am.
Thank you. So can you talk about your experiences, Jonie and Kiana, about any experiences during your graduate programs? Like what kind of classes did you take? When did you like start your clinical or internship setting? I guess, yeah, let's go with that first. Like kind of how was your program structured? Kiana.
Take it, Jonie. So for athletic training, a lot of the programs now are master's programs. At the time where I was applying, they were undergrad programs transitioning into master's programs. So when I got in, it's only a 2-year program, and we basically start off our clinicals right away. So as you're learning, you're also practicing out at high schools or colleges, professional institutions. And with athletic training, there's a lot of orthopedics and just a bunch of different stuff. Like athletic trainers are kind of like the Swiss knife of healthcare. Like we do a lot of emergency care, a lot of counseling, orthopedics, so like physical therapy, personal training, nutrition. So it's kind of like everything and anything that you can think of that kind of goes into the aspects of human movement and functionality in sports.
Jonie, how is the program at UCSF and SF State kind of structured?
So the first year, it starts in the summer, and so you take a lot of, your basic fundamentals like anatomy, biomechanics, and a slow introduction into, first the fundamentals of anatomy, but then like how these, diseases or neuromuscular issues or dysfunctions happen, or how they occur and how they develop. And also learning a little bit also on how we treat that and how we can not only identify it, but like figure out, okay, what can we do about this? And then learning, how to be comfortable in other settings. So maybe you've seen like physical therapists also in the hospital or, in a clinic setting. And so we had to get our feet wet with working in the hospital as well. So it was first year for sure was very like, they're trying to push you towards getting out in the world. And then after you get like that full big picture of everything that's going on with the body, he sends you out to your first clinical. And then it kind of switches off between, a little bit of didactic work and then in the internship too.
Nice. What was the biggest challenge you think you might have faced in your graduate program, and how did you overcome it? I think last night we talked a little bit about like imposter syndrome. So did you feel any of that, and how were you able to overcome that in your graduate program?
You want to go, Kiana? Me?
You got it, Jonie.
Okay, I am queen imposter syndrome. Like day one, I was already like, I am way above my head. I don't belong here. And it was really hard to like, thinking that, hey, like I made it into school, and thinking that, what you have, this is like really difficult to say, but it's just really hard to be in a world where in a classroom where you think you're smart or kind of smart, and then you go into this room full of people who have way more experience than you, they'll learn something in 10 minutes while you take hours to learn. So it's just like everyone is just so vastly different. One thing I can say is that when I was trying to kind of deal with my imposter syndrome, it took a little bit of therapy, but I think I relied most on, talking to surround myself with a good group of people who, reminded me of my worth and who actually see me for who I am, not just like these like insecurities and the self-doubt. And then also one thing I remember is, how can we talk kindly to ourselves? I think it was very natural for me to be like, oh, you're not smart enough. Oh, why didn't you do this better? Like you could have studied a little bit harder. But I think one thing if I could take away from my experience in grad school was like, that's not going to be productive. It's very counterproductive. And so, remember to be kind to yourself, watching your internal dialogue, and stop comparing yourself to other people. And looking back, I wasted so much time comparing myself when I realized that just like everyone else around me, we all have unique qualities to share in this profession. Like what one person might excel in is something I could never do, but I can respect that. And I also need to respect that I have some of my own qualities that are unique to me too, that will help me excel in whatever way I can. And like, if I see a patient, I treat them in one way and they might kind of make some breakthroughs. Maybe someone else will make those similar breakthroughs, but address it in a different way. So we're all like in the same field of like trying to help our patients. And so it doesn't matter like it's just such a waste to compare yourself. And I think I wasted a lot of my time in my last 3 years, but I'm really glad I've gotten over it. So I would say those are my little tips.
Kiana, how about you?
Going off kind of the same thing with Jonie. I went into school thinking that I had a lot of hours, I had a lot of experience, and you come in and everybody else has way more experience than you. So it's kind of, I guess, a humbling experience in that way. Same thing with Jonie as well. You kind of, like, somebody might learn something a lot faster than you, but you also might learn something else faster than that person. So it's kind of, I guess, what they can bring to the table, you can bring something else to the table, and they might learn it the same way that you do as well. With self-care or kind of resilience kind of thing, it was a lot of like stepping back and not being so hard on myself. Yeah, and then just like surrounding yourself with good people who are going to support you no matter what throughout your whole journey.
Awesome. Thank you both. Leveail, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is not, imposter syndrome is something definitely that I think undergraduate students can experience as well. Do you feel like there was any challenge with that during like your program, or any big challenges that you had pursuing kinesiology at SF State?
Well, at SF State, like I felt like, well, actually, like graduating really is where I was like, I like me actually graduating and making it, so to speak. It was like, really? Did this happen? Did this actually happen? Like, like it was kind of like, for some reason, I was kind of like rejecting it in my mind just because like it's been such a goal for so long for me, and then for it to actually happen, it's just kind of like, when a dog kind of like tilts its head, it's kind of like, huh, like really? But as far as like coursework, there's been, like some, like I had to retake only 2 classes, but those, and even some classes, so like one class for me, like biomechanics, was like pretty difficult, but like the classes that I struggled with and that I had to retake, it motivated me to like want to dive into it more and like understand it more, because like I feel like everything is like monumental for like grad school, and so I figure I need to get this down now before I apply to grad school, and it just kind of motivated me to kind of get into this mindset where it's like, where I'm telling myself that, I guess importance, I guess. It made me kind of like more resilient, like the trips that I've had and stuff like that. It just made me more resilient, and it motivated me more to like really understand things more often. Because I think people who major in kinesiology, they may like a specific they might like a specific concentration in kinesiology, and so they kind of gravitate and they kind of love this one area. But when it comes to other concentrations, it's kind of difficult. But for me, it's like I want to learn. It made me more curious about these other concentrations, and it makes me want to learn more about them so I can understand it all a little bit more. If that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, it seems like there's just this theme of like reframing, right? Like it's no longer a negative thing, and you guys have used it to just motivate you and kind of push you through your programs. Which is awesome. You need that motivation and something to hang on to, right? To like get through some of the tougher ones. Cause like you were saying, Leveail, like sometimes you gravitate towards one thing, but that's not the entirety of kinesiology, right? That's not the entirety of a graduate program. So you gotta find those little things to kind of get you through for sure. Awesome. So this might be our last question, just for the sake of time, but many of our students are working part-time or full-time while navigating their current academic program and potentially preparing for their graduate programs. So were there any particular challenges you faced while completing your prerequisites and or applying for your graduate programs? Kiana.
Me? All right, fine. Challenges. I feel like I was kind of blessed and lucky to be able to move back home after college. So I took a year off, and that really helped not only with like a break from school, but also working and gaining experience um, with within the field. I mean, I was basically working at a high school or volunteering at a high school, which was basically work and not being paid. So, and then I also had like an office job in the meantime. I worked in a bakery, so kind of just making money for grad school as well as trying to balance getting experience for my applications. I think that was like the toughest part.
Hi.
Jonie?
Yeah, it was really difficult to make that transition from, that moment when I decided that I wanted to pursue PT because one, was trying to stay in San Francisco and, work however many jobs. I think I was working like three to four part-time jobs and then also doing my volunteer hours and then somehow also taking my prerequisites and retaking the classes I needed to take to get a better grade to, for my application. A lot of saving money, a lot of, being like, what, I don't have to go out, or no, I could probably cook at home by myself, and no, I should look on free SF Fun Cheat one more time because maybe something's out there. So it was a lot of time invested into this one single goal, and it was definitely like a lot of sacrifice to like get to the point, especially like, San Francisco is not cheap, rent is not cheap, so you try to make ends meet, you try to like, one thing I did was kind of goofy actually was like, when I was volunteering at Laguna Honda Hospital, they do 50% off if you're a volunteer, and I would like go and I would bring a container, and I would like make my breakfast and my lunch right then and there. I would be like, eggs for breakfast, eggs for dinner. So that's, you find ways that, if you really want this to work and you really truly believe in that this is the career for you, then you're willing to do whatever it takes to get there, whether it's financially or academically, you make it happen.
Leveail, I wanted to ask you in particular, because I know that you're applying to PT schools and they do have like that volunteer or like observation hour requirement. Has COVID affected your ability to like go in to observe clinicals and things like that?
It has, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think in December, that's the prospective date for potentially volunteers could continue that clinical to complete like their clinical hours and stuff like that. So that's the date that they're shooting for.
Oh, it's December. Yeah.
December, and we got that way back in like February. So
wow. Yeah. So it's gonna take some time then. Yeah, for those volunteer hours for sure. How did Jonie and Kiana, how did you find like resources as far as like applying to athletic training programs or to PT school?
Well, I personally had trouble. There's not a lot of, I guess, graduate program scholarships. Sometimes there are from the actual school that you're applying to, but they're really tough to find. I mean, I tried Filipino scholarships, I tried anything under the sun, but yeah, I don't know how to combat that because I'm basically paying out of pocket for school. And I mean, that sounds pretty bad, but this is something that I'm passionate about. So I wasn't worried about putting up the money for that or like keep paying for that.
Jonie, how about you? Were there any like scholarship opportunities available at any of the PT programs potentially that you had applied to?
I think a lot of the private schools offer some generous scholarships. I just picked UCSF, SFSU because they provided like a lower resident tuition. And so that's sort of what made me choose UCSF over like the other schools and things like that. In terms of resources, yeah, same thing with Kiana. You just kind of dig and see, what scholarships are available that are specific to you. So I tried to look for some that were, from Hawaii, or scholarships that were for Vietnamese Americans. But yeah, there's not too much, but I was really fortunate that the school offered scholarships for us.
Awesome. We have, oh, there he is. We do have the department chair, Dr. Matt Lee, joining us. So we'll give him a little bit to get connected to audio. Hi, Dr. Lee, can you hear us?
I can. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us. We're really excited and so grateful to have your in-depth knowledge of kinesiology to share with our students. We have actually a couple of your alumni here present with us today who may have taken classes from you in the past.
Yeah, I see Jonie. Leveail, I see also.
Hi, Dr. Lee.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Your class seems like years ago.
I know it does, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we did have some questions specifically from students regarding the kinesiology major. So I guess just to kind of start us off with any students who might just be curious about the major, what is kinesiology and what does a kinesiologist do?
Okay, what might be helpful, can I share my screen?
Oh yeah, let me, there we go. That should allow you to share the screen.
I should have, because I did this presentation at Gator Days, and I just have a couple of things that might be useful. And if you guys have seen this before, you can stop me, but I can just kind of pull this up. But that's the first question I had. What is kinesiology? Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So it's a study of movement. A lot of people will say human movement or humans moving. But we just analyze human movement in a variety of ways. I personally am an exercise physiologist, so I study how the body functions during exercise and physical activity, and also how it adapts to exercise and physical activity. But we have other faculty members who focus on more so the movement itself. Like we have biomechanists who will like videotape movements and analyze force and vectors and things like that. So if you take, those of you that have taken biomechanics are familiar with that. We also have faculty that look at the social aspects of physical activity, like why are people physically active and why are some people not physically active. That gets into like sociocultural aspects of physical activity, like history even, and also like sports psychology, the psychology of exercise. And then we also have physical education. So those faculty who prepare students who want to be physical education teachers themselves. So it's a really broad field, and like there's some areas of kinesiology that I know very little about, and that we're really, really diverse department. But so we all kind of have our special kind of areas of expertise, but at the same time, we all kind of work around the same global kind of idea, which is like examining how the body moves and how it functions during movement. So a lot of this revolves around physical activity, and we know that obesity is a big epidemic in today's society, and one of the big questions is how do we get people to become more physically active? And then so we have faculty looking at that also. So as far as like what kinesiology is, I mean, that's it. One of the other questions I saw was like, what do kinesiologists do? And what, I can show you this also really quick. So this is kind of, like I said, kinesiology is a broad field, and we have different subdisciplines within kinesiology. And these are just some of the lists. Like I said, I'm an exercise physiologist. We have biomechanists, we have sport and exercise psychologists, faculty who examine the sociocultural aspects of physical activity, motor behavior, which includes motor learning, motor control, like how we learn movements. And then physical education also. Sports management is in there also. The other thing that I was going to pull up is just careers. So that's a common question that students have. And this is not an all-inclusive list, but I was also, I can pull this up, but there's a website, there's an organization, American Kinesiology Association, that kind of is our, I guess, organization, professional organization that kind of where we all kind of come under this umbrella. Kinesiology is so broad, like in exercise physiology, we kind of have our own professional organizations, which is usually the American College of Sports Medicine. Biomechanists have their own. But American Kinesiology Association kind of brings all of us together. So on their website, they actually have a big list of all the potential careers. And it's a pretty long list. This is just some of it. Like I was mentioning, like you can do things like exercise physiology, biomechanics, but coaching is in there, occupational therapy, physical therapy, cardiac rehabilitation, athletic training. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, to check out that website, the American Kinesiology Association, and you can get a lot of ideas on what are some possibilities. A lot of our students come in with the goal to become a physical therapist. And to be honest, not that many actually make it and go into the field of physical therapy. I think as they get into the program, a lot of students just don't know. And when they get in, they start taking classes, they realize that there's these other areas that they can get into also. Obviously, a lot of our students do get into physical therapy, as Johnny can tell you. But there are a lot of other options also. So I think that was the first question. So any other questions, feel free to chime in, or I can give you some other ideas also.
Yeah, I think there was just a follow-up question kind of like, well, can they pursue these careers with just a 4-year degree in kinesiology?
Some of them you can, for some of them you cannot. So for instance, like a physical therapy, no, it requires a 3 to 3.5 year program after a bachelor's degree, because it's a doctoral program now. Pretty much all physical therapy programs are doctoral programs. Occupational therapy, I think, is moving in that direction also. You could say the same if you're interested in becoming like a physician's assistant. But for the other things, cardiac rehabilitation, yeah, you can do that with a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. They prefer a master's, but you can do a bachelor's degree. Other things as far as sports management, yeah, you could do that with a bachelor's degree.
Awesome.
And there's also a lot of students want to do personal training or working wellness settings, and that's done with a bachelor's degree also.
And can you also speak a little bit about we have an athletic coaching minor. Is that something that students can utilize as well to find a career after graduating?
They can. So that minor actually was developed to go along with our physical education majors, because like if a lot of students that want to become physical education teachers and work in the school system, they also coach. And so that's kind of why that originated. But now we're actually getting a lot of students from our exercise and movement science concentration that don't necessarily want to work in a school, but they want to coach a certain sport. And some of the coaches, like if you look at soccer leagues and other leagues, they get paid relatively well. So that's becoming more and more popular. And we actually are getting a lot of students from other majors across campus that are trying to get into our coaching minor. It's like all of a sudden, this is all within the last year or two. We've just had a lot of students that have shown interest in doing that coaching minor. And so, yeah, it's actually, we were revising it today, and it's only 22 units. And so if you're a Kin major, you get all the classes, I would say most of the classes anyway. So it would be a pretty easy minor to get for a kinesiology major.
Awesome. And then for physical therapy, we do have actually quite a few students who submitted questions asking if, going into kinesiology is the right major and trajectory to get into a physical therapy program.
Yeah, I would say I would narrow it down to 2, kinesiology definitely being probably the top one. But then also biology is another big one that students go into. So Sciences are big. If you want to go into physical therapy, I think of it almost as, I mean, it's probably, this is probably not completely true, but it's almost like that pre-med curriculum would be beneficial because you're taking all the general chem, the general bio, the anatomy, the physiology, the general physics, and that's the same thing that a lot of pre-med students would take. So in kinesiology, you need those. This is just kind of a side note, and a lot of students, once you're kind of going through the program, those courses that you would need to kind of go into physical therapy, like the chemistries and the physics, you need those also for kinesiology, but you have options. You can take either, like for instance, at San Francisco State, they call it a survey of chemistry, or you can take general chem. If you want to go into physical therapy, they're only going to take the general chemistry. So you have to know that going in so you can do that. And obviously we take that, but if you just want to get a degree in kinesiology, you could take the survey of chem, which is a little bit easier, but the PT schools aren't going to take it. So as far as kinesiology being a big major for PT, I would say it's probably the number 1 major. I was looking actually at UCSF's website today, and I think they recommended kinesiology as the major for those students applying to the PT program. But yeah, because the only thing I would say with biology, also you're going to get a lot of those prereqs in, and I mean that's really what it comes down to. I think you could have the major is not as important as you taking those classes that they want you to take, the sciences, and getting good grades in them, obviously.
Awesome.
Yeah, the other thing I would add about kinesiology is being a good stepping stone to PT, you get all the movement classes, right? So you get anatomical kinesiology, the biomechanics, the neuromotor control. Those are all going to be really helpful. And I mean, I'm assuming that's why a lot of PT programs recommend kinesiology as the undergraduate degree if you're thinking about pursuing PT.
Awesome. We had a very specific question regarding not only the kinesiology undergraduate degree, but also the master's degree. So there was a student who was curious because they're thinking of doing the scholar program, which is the combination of the undergraduate and graduate degree. Is that a good path to get into physical therapy? Will that cover more of the prerequisites potentially for that student?
Yeah, it will. The only thing I would say, I do have a slide on that also. Let me pull this up really quick. And I don't know how helpful this is going to be, but this kind of gives you an idea of how the scholar program would work. So you would apply for it really you would need to do it going into your junior year. And then you would, because it's a lot of coursework. So if you're already at the senior level, it would be hard to do it. You're probably better off just going into the master's program after you graduate. But if you start this early enough, you could do it. But basically, to answer your question, yeah, it would be a good route to go. But you would just have to identify that this is what you would want to do relatively early in the process. And so we could map out your coursework, because basically what you're doing by the time you're a senior, at the undergraduate senior, you're actually going to be taking a few graduate courses. And so you would have to make sure that you had done all the coursework that you need to, at least to get to that level. But the good thing about this program would be that you get a lot of research experience. And that, from my understanding, that looks really well to get into graduate programs like physical therapy. We've had students that completed their bachelor's, did not get into PT school, came back to the master's program, and then did get into PT school. So I think that extra schoolwork and academic background, and especially the research experience, really is helpful as far as getting into the PT programs. So yeah, it's great. Like my only suggestion would be that you have to identify this as something you want to do relatively early. And if you think this is a possibility for you, I would contact Dr. Hamill immediately. She's spearheading this program for us. Her email is up on the screen right now. But she is the one that could have a one-on-one meeting with you and let you know probably within 10 to 15 minutes if you're a good candidate for it or not. But I would say, yeah, if you're a good candidate for it, it would make sense. We started with like 1 student in this program, and now I think we have like 5 or 6. And so it's growing, and we can't really handle a whole lot of students in here, but I've had a couple of students in my graduate courses this past year that are in it, and it's great. It's funny because I don't undergrads at some, like, initially, and then they are, and then in the grad program trying to get through in a accelerated fashion. So some of the benefits would be 2 degrees and about a 5, and realistically it's probably a 5.5 year time frame. And you're getting a bachelor's and a master's. And yeah, it would make you really competitive for other graduate programs like physical therapy.
So, and do you have, for the kinesiology program, any tips on scholarships and internships?
So scholarships, we definitely have some. They're usually posted during the spring semester. So you just have to keep they're usually posted on our website. But the easiest thing to do is just to, if you don't see them on the website, to contact the kinesiology office. We definitely have a variety of scholarships. But this spring semester was really chaotic with everything going on. So I think we only had a few applicants to it, but there's one that a lot of our scholarships are pretty specific. Like, for instance, those who want to go into coaching or something like that, or in the physical education concentration. But we have one called the Kinesiology Undergraduate Scholarship that is open to anybody. And that's usually a pretty popular one that students apply for. So you just check the website and see if they have dates for when the application period is. Usually it's in the spring, but another thing to do is just email the Kin office and ask what the time is if you don't see it. Angelina is our ASC in the office, and she's really helpful. And she stays on top. She's really active in the scholarships too, so she knows all the closing dates and all that. As far as internships, we have an internship class. We actually have a couple. If you're looking for like an internship in fitness and wellness, we have a course, Kinesiology 690, that students take usually their senior year. And during that course, you're basically, there's a couple of times where you do have to go to class, but then after that, you're actually placed at a site. And the students actually have a role in deciding on what site they want to go to. But it could be something as simple as the YMCA. It could be a hospital where they're working in cardiac rehabilitation. It could be a PT clinic. And they just, instead of going to class, you go to that site and they basically are getting experience working in the field. And also they do some type of project. It could be a case study on a patient in a clinic. It could be developing some type of manual to improve something in the clinic. But they have some type of project that goes along with it, and then they do a presentation at the end. And it's only, I think, 120 hours of work over the course of the semester. So it's not overwhelming. So students usually do it and still take a full course load of classes. But that's academic credit. We also have 696, which is working in school. So Dr. Walsh spearheads this one. I'm trying to think of it. It actually has a name, but I call it KIN 696, community-based internship. That's it. And you work in, he works at Mission High, and they work with groups of kids in physical activity programs. And then he also does that course during the summer where you're working in a summer camp, what they call a Gator Camp, where kids come in. They could be as young as like 7, 8 years old. And we have the summer camp, and you work basically as a camp counselor with physical activity type programs. So that's another option for internships. And then I always recommend students, if you're interested in something like PT or OT that requires a lot of hours of experience, whether it be volunteer or paid, just to start exploring that on your own, without necessarily getting academic credit for it. But I know PT, for instance, likes to see a lot of volunteer experience. So I encourage students to start identifying sites. If you don't live in San Francisco, on the East Bay, or wherever they live, start looking at places and start getting some experience. And the earlier you do that, the better, because those hours just keep adding up.
Awesome. So I did want to cover those specific questions for students who may have already been in the program. Can you go over a little bit about for students who may be curious or interested in pursuing the major, like how to apply, what those prerequisites may be for them, if maybe after seeing this AMA they want to change their major?
Okay. Let me see if I can. So yeah, I'll show you our most popular major. We have two concentrations. Let me go back. You can see this. So our academic programs, we have our bachelor's degree, we have two major concentrations. We have exercise and movement science, which is probably 90% of our students. And then we have this integrated teacher education program in physical education. This is our physical education concentration, which is about 10 to 15% of our students. Then we also offer a certificate in adapted physical education. This is geared for students who want to be physical education teachers, but also want to work with students with disabilities. So we have some classes that focus on this. One of our faculty, Dr. Yao, that's his area of expertise. And he has some classes related to adapted physical education where you talk about movement and exercise for those with disabilities. So assuming that a lot of students want to focus on exercise and movement, it is still an impacted program. We have really lessened the restrictions on getting into the program over the last semester with everything going on. So it's not hard to be accepted into the program as long as you apply by the deadlines and meet all the deadlines. So to do that, you just have to meet the deadline. So the deadline for the fall has been October to November the year before. So let's say you're a sophomore and you wanted, so our major technically starts at the junior level. So if you were the fall semester of your sophomore year, you would apply for that and you would be accepted for that next fall, the beginning of your junior year. If you missed that deadline, you could apply for the spring of that following year, and that deadline is generally in August. So we let in a lot of late admissions this past year, just with everything going on because everything was so chaotic. But those are the general guidelines. So you apply in the fall for the next fall. You apply in August for the subsequent spring. So that's kind of the time course. As far as the courses that you should have going in, so if you kind of look at the prerequisites, these are the big ones. So you get bio, which could be human bio or general bio or introduction to bio, which at state is 230. I call it general, I guess it's introduction to bio. And so statistics, introduction to kinesiology, which you do not have to be a kinesiology major to take. It's preferred that you're a pre-kinesiology major, but if you're interested in kinesiology and you talk to the faculty teaching that course, you can probably get in if you're not a pre-kin major. Anatomy is always helpful. Chemistry is always helpful. I'm going to throw in physics too, because that's something you can take early on too if you can, and that would be helpful at the same time. And then if you have, to be honest, if you have the bulk of those, you're going to be good to go. We have some students that get in and only have one of those, and it takes them longer to get through the program, but it's still possible. So the more of those that you can kind of get done in the first 2 years, freshman, sophomore years, the better off you're going to be. And just as a side note, as I was saying earlier, like if you know your career goals, it might be helpful. It would be helpful early on because it can help determine which classes you take. Like you look up here at the bios. If you're interested in going to PT school, you want to take Bio 230 because that's going to allow you to take this 328 human anatomy, which is a little bit more intense than the 220 human anatomy. If you take the Bio 100, you can't take 328. You're stuck taking the 220, which is not as detailed. Like it doesn't have as much cadaver work. So it's just something that I don't know how really to get the word out there. I have this conversation with a lot of students, but we have it on a lot of our materials and online, but a lot of students miss this just because it's so early on. Like they're taking these courses as freshmen and they don't realize it at the time. But so the 230 is is a good course to take if you know that you want to go to graduate school in an area like PT, and that allows you to take Bio 328. The same thing goes for chemistry. If you're interested in grad school in PT, you want to take the general chem as opposed to the survey of chem. And so that's just something that I always like to bring up, and whether if it pertains to the students or not, it's just, I don't think I can say that enough, because I've seen so many students have to go back and retake some of these courses because they want to go to PT school and they want to apply to PT school, but they took the lower level chemistry. That being said, after that, I mean, the rest of these courses, you kind of have to be a kin major to take. So after you're accepted into the program, you can take these core classes. You can see this is like more of the detailed kinesiology courses like exercise phys, anatomical kines, our research methods class, which is our core writing class, motor learning. And then we have the rest of these concentration requirements, which you can see here, which physiology, sports psychology, and then some of the labs that go along with those courses. And then we actually students choose an emphasis area, either movement science, social science, or exercise science. And within those emphasis areas, I don't have the courses up here, but it's 12 units, whichever one you take. If you say go into exercise science as the emphasis area, there's basically 4 classes that you need to take. You want to do social science, there's 4 other classes. Movement science, 4 other classes. That's kind of how it's set up. So I don't know. I know your question was about applying and what you need to apply, but that's pretty much it. I mean, did that answer it enough?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, so do students need to have their 60 units before being able to enter the program? So they have to be of junior standing. Is that right?
Yes. So as long as they have 60 units by the fall of their junior year. So let's say that you applied and you're going to start this coming fall. As long as you have 60 units by the end of this summer, you'd be good.
Okay, awesome. So even that summer semester will count towards the 60 units. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it helps if you're going to have more than that, because that is something that we do look at when we let students in, how many units they have. And if they're at 57, but we know they're going to summer school, then yeah, it's not a problem. If they're like at 45 going into the summer, then we know that's not really going to happen. So yeah, it is something we look at just to make sure they have 60 units, because you do have to be a junior to get into the program.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. That was all of the submitted questions that we have. If any students have any questions for Dr. Lee while he's here about the kinesiology program, I would definitely encourage you to either put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask the question as well. I guess we potentially might not have any other questions. Let me just double check with the submitted questions to see if there's any that maybe we did not touch on yet.
Yeah, what I can do also is, let me just see if I can share another screen, just our website. This might be helpful if I can find it. Let's see what's on here. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Website? Yeah? Okay. So this is our website. It has like all the information. There's like an introductory video that I did from my home during the shelter in place. So I just basically kind of talk like I'm talking now about the programs. But if you go into like prospective students, it'll tell you about all the application deadlines. And so all the stuff that I was kind of spouting out that you may not have, you're not going to remember. This is everything that you need to know. So if you forget anything or want to look something up, it's all here. So you can look through here. It has the deadlines, as I was talking about, to apply. If you're a transfer versus first-time freshman, it talks about what you can do. We also have some videos. So that presentation that I was kind of rushing through with you, it's on here. So we also have another faculty member that was doing a similar presentation. But This, if you click here, Virtual Gator Days presentation, that's it. That's the same set of PowerPoint slides that I had pulled up. But if you want to hear, like, look into some of our research labs, we have some videos on here, some of the research going on with muscle physiology, virtual reality type research. Our teacher education program has a video up here. And I think we're gonna, I was gonna show something else. Yeah, just about the programs. If you go to, all right. Oh, I know what I was gonna tell you. If you go to student resources, common question we get is, how do you apply to PT schools? So if you go to the frequently asked questions, so where can I find prerequisites for PT schools? So if you go here, we have a link to pretty much all of the PT programs, all of the occupational therapy programs. And so if I click on it, I'll just show you where it goes really quick. So list of programs, you can scroll by state if you want to look at all the programs in California. You want to choose an accredited program, click that, and it'll just pull up all the things. So here's UCSF's program with San Francisco State. If you go to it, you can look up all the information that they have about prereqs, what they require, application process. So that's a useful tool for a lot of students, because a lot of students don't necessarily know where to get started. But this is a great place to get started, and you can look at their prereqs, for example, and see what they require. And that's really good to know, because it really, when students ask like what classes they need for PT school, I ask, have you looked at what school you want to go to? And a lot of times they haven't. So that's the first step. Find out, get an idea of what schools you want to apply to, and then look specifically at their recommendations and what they require to get in. So that's a good resource to have. So yeah, I would use our website a lot. Angelina, our ASC, does a really good job of updating everything. So it's a good resource to have, as opposed to maybe emailing and waiting on a response. It's a good way to get quick information.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I do want to be respectful of your time. I know that you only had a short availability for tonight.
Yeah, my kids downstairs making a mess.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us and for answering those specific questions that students had, as well as kind of giving us that overview of the program itself. I don't know if any students have any questions currently, but we'll also show them again, like the resources that they can utilize should they have any further questions. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, if any of you have questions about anything, feel free to send me an email. I'm sure you can find my email on the website, and I'll be happy to answer the question. If I can, I'll try to point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah,
Bye.
take care. Awesome. So now I just kind of want to open up the floor for anyone who might have had questions for our guest speakers. We did have some submitted questions regarding like PT requirements and things like that. So let me actually pull up this slideshow. So I know that one of the questions submitted was like, what are the prerequisites for PT school, right? So there are a lot. And like Dr. Lee was saying, a lot of them can be covered in just your kinesiology program, but it's really going to depend what school you want to go to, right? So I think Jonie and Leveail, you can both speak on UCSF's prerequisites, but that will differ from like Sac State, which has different prerequisites. They look at different background criteria. And then for athletic training, those prerequisites and what they expect for their application will also differ. So it really depends, I think, on what program you're applying for. So Jonie, Kiana, Leveail, can you guys speak on like trying to cover all of those prerequisites depending on where you're applying to?
Like trying to complete them all?
Yeah. Yeah, because they're just so diverse. And I know Jonie, you had applied to a bunch of different schools. So can you, talk a little about?
Yeah, I can. So I, when I figured out that I wanted to do PT, it wasn't during school, it was after. And then the next step was, like Dr. Lee was saying, making a list of those schools that you want to go to. I kind of just spread a wide net, primarily wanting more so like West Coast. And so what was really helpful, and maybe if you guys are really interested in physical therapy, what you can do is choose those schools. You can make, this is super organized, but if you make an Excel sheet to organize yourself to make sure you kind of check all those check boxes, because if you don't have a particular course that's completed according to that school and it's their requirement, they'll just kind of nix you out of the application pool. So you have to really make sure you kind of check all those check boxes, do whatever that needs to be done according to their prerequisites. So I even like eliminated schools because I was like, you know what, I'm not going to take that extra class, or, just I took some extra courses at City College and just made sure like they corresponded to the school's requirements.
Awesome. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about the GRE. So like all the PT programs, correct me if I'm wrong, require the GRE. Is that right, Jonie and Leveail?
Mm-hmm.
Are you both required to do the GRE for your prerequisite?
Yeah, it's annoying.
But for some athletic training programs, Kiana, you don't need the GRE. Is that right?
At least to my knowledge, when I was applying, a lot of them, at least on the West Coast, didn't need them. So.
Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to share that there is an additional test to take to even get into PT school after you've done your 4 years.
Ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
And then after graduating, Jonie, you mentioned at the very beginning of this that you're studying for an additional exam. So can you talk a little bit about the exam that you do need to take after your graduation?
Yeah, so you have the details here. It's the NPTE, and basically this exam, you can take it more than once, I think, in a year. But hopefully you're not taking it more than once a year because it's kind of expensive. So it's basically questions that cover, the musculoskeletal system, neuromuscular system, cardiovascular, cardiopulm, and other systems like that. And it's not necessarily, I think from my experience at UCSF, SFSU, the material, like I would say like 80-90% was covered. And I think our pass rate is really good. I think it's about 99% right now. Just knock on wood that doesn't change. But yeah, more exams.
And Kiana, can you speak a little bit about your board exam?
Like Jonie said, you can take it basically as much as you want. It's pretty expensive though, so I wouldn't recommend it. But seeing what you have to do with Jonie's exam, it's pretty similar. The only thing, you do have emergency care. Yeah, it's pretty similar. And you can take it either while you're still in school, so you can get certified as soon as you graduate and like go out into the workplace, or some programs, they suggest that you take it after school so that you're not focusing on that while trying to graduate as well.
I'll add one more thing. You don't necessarily need to complete your NPTE exam to actually practice. You can actually start working right when you're done with school with the intent of taking the NPTE, so you can work and study for boards. Some people like to work under pressure, and I do not. So yeah, you're able to make money like immediately after school if you choose so. So that's a really cool thing that you can do. You're called a PTLA. So it's like, you're not technically licensed, but you've completed all your coursework and you are equipped to treat patients, but not, but only for like, until you get your NPTE scores to say that you passed.
Awesome. I also want to encourage students, if you have questions, just feel free to unmute yourself or place them in the chat. I do want to throw in this little caveat that we are not health professionals. We're just mere mortals. So do make an appointment to see your college or major advisor. If you're curious about kinesiology, always feel free to go to the College of Health and Sciences advising page. You can make an appointment with them to schedule an appointment and learn a little bit more about like pre-kinesiology. They even have a little pamphlet on their site that you can refer to. So yeah. Oh, do we have? Oh. Is it common for students to apply to DPT or MS programs while you're still in undergrad, or do you recommend taking time off to gain experience or full additional prerequisites?
I'm actually taking time off just so I can work, because you have to have a certain amount of like clinical hours in order to apply to grad school. In addition to like letters of recommendations, there's just a lot that you have to kind of collect. And again, it's also what Jonie said. It's like she said that she mentioned she used Excel to like write down specific things and then you like mark it off. But like there's a lot to like do. And personally for me, I plan on taking time off because I just want to work on doing all of that and taking my time doing it. And I don't know if it's common, but I will say what is common is like, so when Matt Lee was in the Zoom earlier, he mentioned that students should look into starting clinical work, their clinical hours outside of class. That's something that I did during my undergrad. After my first year, that's when I started to volunteer at the VA Medical Center in their PT department. So I've been doing that for like maybe a year and a half. So I would say it's common for students to work on their clinical hours during undergraduate school, but it says applying to the program. I actually, that's a hard question to ask. Just because I don't really know, but I will say what is common is for students to work on their clinical hours. Definitely.
Yeah, Jonie,
I got it.
do you have
All right.
Go for it.
Personally, I took time off. I knew that I was already kind of getting burnt out from college, from undergrad, so I wanted to, I guess, just take the year off, kind of work and not worry about school for a little bit. I did do clinic hours while I was in undergrad. I actually did it at the college that I was attending, as well as like a nearby high school that I could just walk to. So, I mean, it's possible, but at least from friends that I've known that have gone straight from undergrad to grad school, a lot of them were getting burnt out at the end. So taking time off to just work, gain some money, rest a little bit from the schoolwork, it might help.
For me, I would say personally, I just really liked having that life experience with doing, my many part-time jobs and figuring out, what worked for me and what didn't work for me. So, but I do know, like, a good, I want to say third of my class went straight from undergraduate straight into PT school. And I think what separated me from them was sort of that life experience of, I have worked with kids and I have worked with this particular population. I have worked with persons with disabilities. And my classmates, unfortunately, they were just in the bubble of school and they were really hardworking. And I agree with Kiana, they may have gotten a little burnt out, but I think it's kind of like to each their own. I do know that some schools have, if you get in, you can apply and you can get in, and you can actually, if they are kind enough, you can actually defer for a year. So you can even say like, hi, like, I'd love to be a part of your program. Okay, you go through the whole application process, you're in, and then you can defer for a year and then start the following year if you'd like to do that. Bless you. And I also have something to share with you guys. I think I can share my screen.
Yeah.
This is the Google sheet that I used. Let's see if I can share that. So this is sort of like a mock-up of what I was using. So I broke it down from university, location, deadlines, if they had an early decision, and prerequisite coursework. And then when I completed it, then I would highlight it or bold it or something, and putting down all those details for schools, and making sure do I have all my transcripts, or making sure I go through the PETCAS. This is basically it's like a common app that everybody maybe used in the just to send out applications to as many PT schools as conveniently as possible, and it kind of collects them all in one place, so you can just easily send your transcripts or send your recommendation letters very easily. So Leveail, you might be using, you're welcome to use this. I can send this to you later if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So yeah, it's up to you. If you feel like PT is your number one dream and that's something that you want to do, go for it. And it sounds like Dr. Lee has all the pieces in place to help you get to that point. And but if you are still unsure and you want to explore more options, and you want to dip your toes in everything, and you're interested in so many things, and maybe you want to go into music, and maybe you want to go into art and so many other things, don't hold that back from yourself either. Go ahead and take that chance of I do want to dip my toes into this. Let me try that. And it's going to give you, I think it gives you a more broader perspective actually going into PT, because you are coming in with so much more breadth of knowledge of how can we serve our diverse population? How can we be more creative? Because not everyone is maybe thinking athletically. And I kind of disagreed with Dr. Lee in one of the points that he was saying. Our program is looking at a lot of diversity, and we had students coming from, I kind of started with my story about my grandmother, and I kind of came in with this route, going towards older adults. Some people are coming in, wanting to work with pediatrics. We have dancers, we have yoga instructors, we have Pilates instructors. So these folks are in their 40s, 50s even, and they've lived lives before they start PT school. And then there's, the other side of the spectrum of those who started right away. So it's kind of up to you. If there's other things that you want to pursue, don't stop. Go ahead, let yourself explore.
I was gonna say too, there's a lot of truth to what Lee said about different classes and stuff like that. I feel like all it takes is one class for you to question whether or not you're interested in this concentration of kinesiology, or a different sports psychology. You might want to be a sports psychologist, or a biomechanist, or all it takes is one class for you, and it could question whether or not you want to work with athletics or something, or it just depends on what classes you take, and that might change the trajectory, and that might change the requirements or something for grad school or something like that. But all it takes is one class, and you might fall in love with that one class, and that concentration. And just the more you learn, essentially, the more you learn, the more curious and interested you'll become when it comes to kinesiology, the degree at SF State. So.
Well, I want to be respectful of our speakers' times, our students' times, our EOP staff's time. It is 8:30, so if we have any final questions from students, definitely you can unmute yourself and try to ask now. If not, if you all have other plans for tonight, definitely don't feel like you are forced to stay here. Yeah. I guess we don't have any other questions. But at this point, Julie, I guess we can maybe stop